Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, which has now become my conventional greeting, I suppose, depending upon which time of day that you tune in and consume your media. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 76. I'm your host, Menelik Fernandez. And the premise of the show, of course, remains the same, where we take teams that have played previously and we run the game back, so to speak, where we correct errors, talk about preparation, talk about the intricacies of scout, talk about in-game adjustments, all that fun stuff that coaches would love sitting around the bar or the restaurant with the salt shakers and the napkins out for sure. And just try to have a conversation talking about, what adjustments we would make. Today we are looking at a game that I don't actually have the date of this game, Jamie. It wasn't included in what was sent, but we are looking at Gravesend versus Northfleet. And this is a game from the UK, and we're joined by a coach from the game, Coach Jamie Tong. Jamie is a friend and somebody who I think is remarkably prepared and does an excellent job in terms of playbooks, that is for sure. But has sat down with me on numerous Zooms over the past year or so, just shooting the breeze, trying to get better for both of us, and exchanging ideas. And it's a forum that I really enjoy and look forward to hopefully being able to replicate while we record this. So, Jamie, if you give me a second, I'll try and do a little bit of your background and give you a warm welcome. We've got 5 years as an assistant head coach at the North School Lions Basketball Academy. So that's from 2015 to 2020. 2 years as the assistant head coach of the Southeast England U17 boys team, and 3 years as the head coach of Kent County U17 boys team, and now the head of basketball at Gravesend Grammar School from 2020 to present. So, sir, welcome. I'm ecstatic to have you here, and I look forward to chopping it up with you.
Cheers, Menelik. Thank you. It's appreciate being on. Really enjoy the show. Big fan. So thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Appreciate you jumping on. So give us, those of us who wouldn't know, a little bit of a background of your league, your conference, the level of play that exists, all those fun things that sort of are like the details behind, and this game and your players and what it's like over there.
Yeah, for sure. So we're a brand new program. I made the change and went to Gravesend during the pandemic. So obviously things were a little bit different for us last year. The league here is it's our county under 19s league. So there's a fair few programs in there. A lot of programs that play at a slightly higher level put their second teams in. And this is what we saw with NTC. This is NTC's second team. But for us, it's a great starting point. It's a great league to be in. And get some good competition in there as well. We'll play a couple of other leagues and some exhibition stuff as well. But this is really the start of the journey for us. And most of my guys are pretty new to the game. A lot of them picked it up during the pandemic, and hence my role at the school. So we're just trying to build things and get things up and running, and go from there, really.
I love it. And would this would be an exclusively school only model, or would you compete against clubs as well, or would you follow the club mentality in terms of how things are tapered in the hierarchy of age? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is schools only. So only guys that are enrolled at the school can play. And this is, like I say, it's an under 19s league. We only got to under 18s at our school. We don't have a year 14. But that's typically this is like a sixth form league. So year 13, year 12, year 13. We do have some younger ones as well. We have an under 16. So where you were saying about kind of club structure, we do kind of have that within the school as well.
Right.
This is like our senior end. So our guys that are obviously going to be going off to universities either next year or the year after.
Love it. I've done high school games with this show before, and I would say that the spectrum of what is available to coaches at the high school level in terms of resources is broad, to say the least. So give us a little bit of a background as to where you are in your season, and if you've played this team before, and what sort of references. I know through talking to you offline that like you focus more on yourself than you do on your opponent. But what sort of resources do you have available, if any, to be able to focus on the other team? Let's start there.
Yeah, so it's pretty limited. This was actually our first league game this year, so we didn't have any tape from them. And as I say, with the pandemic, it's been pretty difficult to kind of track much back. So pretty new squad coming in. We didn't know really personnel wise who we were going to see. Unfortunate enough to have within different programs competed against NTC for a number of years. So I had a pretty good idea in terms of playing style and what we were likely to see. And that gave us kind of a heads up in terms of what we wanted to prep for. But in terms of video, we had nothing. And we were kind of blind to personnel and what exactly we were going to see. I was able to see a little bit from their first team from back end of last season, but again, you can't rely too much on that sort of thing because it could be very different. So as you said, we tried to focus a lot on our prep and what we were trying to do with just, I was drip feeding the guys what we were expecting. So tough on that sense, but normally, I mean, now that we've played them, we play them again in January. So we'll be able to then review that film and prep a lot more for that. And that's the same with all of the league games. They're all home and away. So once we play the first, we get a pretty good idea ready for the second. And that's the same with a lot of our exhibition games as well. But until we play that first game, it is kind of blind, and you do have to rely on your own prep and any feedback you can get from other coaches around the league, which...
So what I'm laughing about while you're saying all that is that, you use the term, I'm drip feeding them a little bit in terms of preparation. And I know you're a fairly prepared guy, and I know that you take your work seriously. So drip feeding to you is probably not the same as drip feeding to many others, because you are so prepared and do work very hard. So I'm not going to let you off the hook. Give me a little bit of a background in terms of what it is that you are putting in for your guys. And you mentioned this is your first game. How much time do you have to prep? And sort of like, where do you start? What are you building into? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, so we came off, whilst it was our first league game, it was our third game of the year. So we were coming off a couple of friendly, like pre-season games. So really we're looking at a kind of turnaround of a week between the last game where we finished a review on that, and then we're starting to lead up with practice. We had 2 team sessions before the game, and then we had our skill development stuff on top of that as well. But in terms of team prep, we had 2 leading up to the game. So it was a case defensively, we kind of knew what we were going to do, and we were pretty happy with what we were going to do there, and that was pretty much based on our philosophy really, and that's pretty much the same game to game. But offensively, we were expecting a lot of switching. We were expecting a lot of size from them. We knew that they were going to play inside. They were going to get inside. So a lot of that sort of prep in the lead up to the game was based on that. And how could we attack their switches offensively? What were the best actions for us to be preparing for? And if we needed to change that up come game time, then that's fine. But we spent a lot of especially our offensive prep based on attacking those switches and figuring out how to take advantage there, really.
Now, you mentioned that you might have to throw audibles in game type deal. You might have to move away from what you had spent time on. Do you do anything where you're introducing common language so that you can make those adjustments quickly? Do you do anything where it's like, for this team, you were preparing for a switching defense, but if they start throwing high hedging, and have you walked through it at all? Are you going through a spectrum of things, or are you pretty narrow and then just kind of depending upon, hey, I'm going to show you this once, or I'm going to tell you this exists, and we might have to move into that?
Yeah, it's kind of, we try and get through most of that stuff in the preseason. We're lucky enough to have a little preseason camp at the start of the year as well. So we kind of go through the broad spectrum there. So like you said, then we've got our terminology, we know what things mean, and then we can prep the guys as to, this is what we're expecting, this is what we're likely to go to. But if we, like I say, if we need to come out of it and go into something else, then we've got that as a reference point. And, we may not have done a lot of that in practice this week, but we should know what it is we're going to. if they do show us something different.
Love it. What are your philosophies on things like pace of play, how many people to the glass, and then offensively, like motions versus set plays and high ball screens, etc.
Yeah, so we press a lot. We try and hang our hat on our kind of defensive disruption and changing things up on defense. So in terms of pace of play, when we can get into that, we can tend to play a lot quicker and get some disruption and some steals going through that for our defense.
Right.
When you're talking about motion versus set, we try and run a lot more action based on reading what's the defense showing and what's happening on that first pass, and then play off of that first pass really. So different entry passes will trigger different things, and then I can kind of direct the guys. It gives me a little bit of control there to direct the guys into the sort of things that we want to be running, but it also gives them hopefully a little bit of freedom to be able to change things up in the game. So I take a little bit more control on that front, and I think again where it's obviously a slightly newer team, we just want to make sure that we're giving that direction to them, but trying to stay away from going really set based. Like I say, having it based more on triggers. What's the defense doing, and what can that trigger for us on that first pass?
Right. So there's definitely an element of teaching that has to go in there, like if this then that, if this then this, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's like we'll go to this if we see this from the defense, and then based on what happens next, we'll trigger this or this, and we try and have it flow from that really. But giving the guys a lot of freedom to, if they think they can attack their man, then they've got the freedom to do so, and then we're just really playing a little bit more conceptually from there, and giving them a little bit more freedom on that front, and of course in transition as well, giving them that freedom when we can get out and break.
And what about to the glass? What are your theories on offensive rebounding?
So we've in the process of installing a tag up system this year, which is new for me. It's something that we're sort of throwing in there, and we're trying to stick with it, and we'll see how we go. It's a long process. It's still a long journey. I feel like we're starting to head in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to do. So, but we're trying to throw it all in with that.
That's interesting because, during the pandemic is when I first became aware of it. I had the good fortune of listening to Aaron Fern, its creator, a few times, and it has definitely not made its way to Canada at all. It's just not something that's seen. Definitely not at the high school level, not at my college level, as we've begun playing exhibition games now, and not so much at the university level. So I'm curious, I'd like more feedback later on in the season from you as to how you feel it's going after teaching it, especially at the high school level, because I think it conceptually is, it's not hard to grasp, but it's relatively new in terms of what coaches are doing. So
I think it's one of those where, as I say, because the guys are so new to it, really, they haven't got a lot of those preconceptions about things. So, it was an opportunity to throw something different in there without having to try and break a lot of old habits that have been formed from being used to playing a certain way or being, habitually doing this. So I saw it as a bit of an opportunity to do something different, to give it a try and see how we get on. And for sure, we'll monitor how it goes over the season. But I think because it is a bit different, it's, teams aren't, when we are successful with it, and the key is the consistency. But when we are successful with it, I think because it is quite different, teams they're not used to seeing it, and I think it gives us, we try not to be afraid to do different things, and I think at our high school level it can have a really, really good impact.
Love it. So here's the tricky question at the high school level. Get a wide array of answers often, but do you do anything like depth charts? How many players are you playing? And do you sub based upon performance, or do you try and let guys feel out their mistakes and play through them type deal? How's that look for you?
Yeah, to a certain extent. We typically kind of go 8 deep, and those guys will get heavier minutes. And those are the guys that we kind of we will let them feel out their mistakes a little bit more. After that, we are really ultimately subbing based on performance, and
Right.
you know, if you're getting that shot and you're being productive on the court and you're doing the right things, then you're going to stay on. But typically, once we go out of 8, it is really quite critical. You know, within that top 8 rotation as well, you know, some guys are going to have off games and whatnot. But yeah, typically we're kind of 8 deep.
Like it. And there's not like a formula for what part of the game they're playing. You're doing some of that based on eye test. Like, I think this moment requires this player.
Yeah, and heavily based on what we're seeing from the other team as well. Like, you know,
Okay.
we're not huge. We have okay size for a UK high school team. We have okay size across, you know, we've got a couple of guys that are big and we have okay size, but we have to be very mindful of what the other team's putting on the court. And,
Right.
you know, we can quite easily fall into a much smaller lineup, and that can really hurt us. So it's just being really aware of that. And that does have a big impact on who we've got on the court. Yeah, and we try and play off of that, really. We don't really use any kind of set rotations for who we want on the court at what time, just because performance fluctuates so much with the guys. So it's really about who's giving what in the moment.
Right. As that kind of brings me naturally, I think, to the next question or series of questions that pop into mind is, what's important to you in games? So, I mean, what are your assistants tracking, if anything? What are you looking at on a box score, say at the end of a quarter, end of half, to make adjustments? And then, you know, particularly for this one, you mentioned you've been around a few years, you've seen this coach. You know, was he going to the stuff that you had expected? Or did he sort of throw an audible at you and now you're like, we got to go this way on this and this and this? So, you know, what's sort of important to you? What stands out? What are you using to make adjustments within game?
Yeah, so I have one assistant that will track during the game. Turnovers is always a big one for us. We place an emphasis on turnovers by quarter.
Right.
And that pretty much comes into play every time out, every stoppage, every halftime. It's a constant one across all games, really. Offensive rebounds was another one for this game as well, because we knew they were going to have good size, and we wanted to really hold the guys accountable for boxing out and defensive rebounding efficiency. So they were the 2 ones that we were tracking throughout the game. Now, funnily enough, offensive rebounding we controlled really well in the first half, and kind of lost a little bit of focus. And reflecting back, actually, we were much worse in the second half.
Right.
So I wish that we'd stick with that a little bit more, because I think where we kind of drifted away thinking, yeah, we're okay there, and it kind of came back on us a little bit. But turnovers is a constant one, and we're always talking about that. And my assistant will look at which of our guards that have the ball what are their individual turnover numbers like as well. So do we need to sub them for a little bit to make sure that we're keeping that number down? So they're the 2 that we they were the 2 that we were tracking this game, but turnovers is a really consistent one. And you're gonna have to pardon me, I forgot the second part of the question.
Just what's really stands out to you on a box when you get the actual box score. You kind of touched on like the offensive rebounds being important to you. What else are you using, and how are you sort of implementing change? And then there was actually a third part. The third part was, you had mentioned that you knew this coach and had coached against him previously, seen him previously. So, you know, did he sort of fall in line with what you had expected, or, you know, did he kind of come out of left field with some new stuff for you?
Yeah, second part of the question is an interesting one, actually, because we don't really get a lot of information back. All we can really track from that at the time is kind of personal fouls and team fouls and those sorts of things. Like, we don't really have, until the game's done and we're finished, I'm finished tagging it and processing it, we won't get those more in-depth stats. So we can't really rely too much on it. Obviously, personal fouls we're always keeping an eye on, as we always would. But yeah, we can't rely too much on getting much in the game along the box score. And then third part to your question, yes was the answer. They did do what we expected, which, you know, the educated guess kind of paid off. We didn't execute quite as well as I'd hoped, but they did do what, in terms of kind of switching and things, it was what we were expecting to see, and we did get into the stuff that we wanted to run. It was just more the reads out of that was a continual focus throughout the game. But yeah, we kind of saw, we were expecting man-to-man defense the whole game, and we saw that, you know, and I was kind of semi-expecting a press, and we didn't see that, which in a way was kind of made life a little bit easier because we didn't have to worry about that too much. So we did see some full court pressure towards the end of the game. I'm sure you remember seeing that, but nothing that really caused too much of a problem for us, and nothing that we had to really adapt to.
Right. I actually have a clip of them trying to press you at the end that we'll talk a little bit about when we get to the film. The only thing I think I sort of missed, well, there's two parts really, but the one is you kind of spoke on other coach pretty much doing what you had expected him to, and you said you didn't have a tremendous amount of time between the games, and you mentioned where you are in season. So from all of that, talk a little bit about how you actually convey the message to the guys of what you're expecting. Is it just as simple as a conversation of, you know, their pace is going to be fast, or they're going to press or not press, or they're going to switch a lot? Or when you're on court, do you spend some time walking through those actions that you thought and sort of, you know, breaking it down, dissecting what you want to go through, what's of importance? And is everybody getting the same message? And is your assistant coach getting things at the same time as you, or is he a little bit ahead and trying to modify the message before they get it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of prep, it depends whether or not we've got film. If we are lucky enough to have film, then we can do a lot more with it. And typically we have huddles, so that's really useful for us. So typically the guys, everyone will get a kind of a small 4 to 5 minute clip of any defensive coverages that we're aware of, or any particular offensive tendencies that we're likely to see again and again.
Right.
They'll get one playlist of that we'll normally give a couple of days before the game, after we've sort of spoken about them. And then we'll give another playlist as well. If we've played the team previously, we'll do one that's matchup based, and we'll show tendencies for the kind of, really for us, it's only the key 2 or 3 guys at that point. We're not worrying about going 5, 6, 7 guys deep. It's the kind of key 2 or 3, just trying to keep the information manageable for them, because as I say, they're still new, they're still learning all these things. But tendencies, stats from last game, our preference in terms of matchups in order, you know, preferences, we've got X guarding him, and if not, then it's X guarding him. So we'll typically use the film a lot in that sense. If we don't have film, then like you say, yeah, it's a lot of on court, through conversations, through session briefs. You know, when we're prepping for the session on the whiteboard, we'll talk about, you know, what we're expecting, how that then relates to us. You know, so we're expecting the switch in defense on our screen. So now bringing this back to what we're going to be doing offensively, you know, when we're running our shake action, then we're looking to attack it through this rather than this, you know, these reads. So kind of getting the information in there. In terms of the assistant, so my assistant is obviously, like I say, we're new, so my assistant's not always with us on the court, and I do the scouting. So it's kind of, he's getting the information at the same time. And then prepping from there. And we'll have some chats beforehand about what we're going to be focusing on in the game, what we want to be statting, you know, rotation wise, who's looked good that week, who's taken the things quite well that week, who do we want to, right. Yeah. So, yeah, it's really that's the kind of approach, just trying to, as I say, drip feed.
I love it. And I'll end here on questions before I move into a bit of the film. Enrico is actually on the call, and I often mention that I stole this question through something that he does, and I love it, and I would definitely move into it. So shout out Enrico for that. Do you do anything that is sort of like a self-appraisal after the game, where it's like, you know, you'll write up how good the scout was in comparison to the way you performed, or you'll leave notes saying that you omitted something that probably would have helped, or you go through the game and you pull out little things that you think are of importance, and it's like, this was probably a key moment in the game that I may have either missed or needed to do something else. Do you do anything that's along the lines of that process? And I actually personally think that this is really important, and I'm definitely going to do it moving forward, but I didn't really do anything along these lines previously, I don't think.
Yeah, so it's for sure something I try and do. I mean, for the guys particularly, we post game will give them normally a 5 to 7 minute defensive analysis playlist, and then a 5 to 7 minute offensive analysis playlist through the
That's
breakdown
awesome.
through huddle. Typically, obviously, that depends on how fast the games are coming around as well. Sometimes we'll merge them together. I mean, funnily enough, actually, this week is a merge one, so it's across 2 games.
Right.
But for me personally, yeah, I always try and review the game back and against the game plan and with the film. Obviously time permitting, is we're always trying to find the time for it. But yeah, I always try and review on that. Like what worked, what didn't work, what maybe did I do in timeouts that were beneficial, that weren't so beneficial, kind of moving ahead to the next game. What do I want to change? What do I want to adjust on? So try and review it all back towards the game plan that we sort of put out right at the start of the game. And that's normally what we'll talk about in this couple of hours pre-game. Yeah, try and relate it all back to that, really. You look at the stats, that sort of thing.
When you look at this one, obviously you revisited the stats a little bit in preparation for this. Do you think there was anything that maybe you missed out or you would add, like just sort of like picking your brain as to what you would think process wise on this one? I mean, obviously you came away with it. So talk to me about that. Is there anything in there that you look at and think, maybe I should have done this here? Or did you think overall pretty close to the game plan that you guys constructed?
Yeah, for sure. I think there was definitely a lot of defensive rotation stuff that I wished I'd picked out a little bit more throughout the game. Wish we'd spent some time speaking about those things. We actually picked it up post game afterwards, but just a little bit slow on certain rotations that I feel like I could have put the guys better for. Offensively, I think, as I say, we got into a lot of the actions that we wanted to when we were in half court offense, but our reads for me weren't where they needed to be, and we weren't really attacking the switches in the way that maybe we wanted to. So that was featured in timeouts. It was a point of discussion, but again, I think I could have given a little bit more specific direction to the guys. Let's look for this or this rather than this. Maybe I think maybe the direction was a little bit too broad on that, and decision making was tough for them at their level. So for sure, there were a couple of things there offensively. I was quite happy with the freedom that we had in transition in the end. I think that was a decision to kind of let them play through transition a little bit more. I was happy with. But yeah, for sure, some defensive rotation stuff, especially when we went into the zone as well. There were some bits we got away with, some bits that looking back on film we should have picked up. So yeah, it worked out, but for sure, some things that we looked at in the video review and some things that I took note of as practice points for moving ahead for the next game.
It's funny to me because I coached high school for 2 years and I did AAU travel basketball for several. And one of the things that I always struggled with was the shooting percentages being as low as they are. And I mean, that's not universal. Some teams are great for sure. But like when the games are settled in the 50s and 40s instead of the 80s and 70s, it's like sometimes you make really great adjustments and you just don't get a basket out of it. And you're like, like that's, and I'm sure that's the same all the way through, but more so at the high school level is what I found. So
funny enough, funny you should say that. This was actually, we didn't shoot the ball great. We didn't shoot the ball great at all from outside. I think we finished okay inside in this game, but and we knew that was a point of emphasis, really taking it to them inside, because we knew that we looked at their bigs and we knew that we were probably going to draw a lot of fouls, and we knew that they didn't like contact through the finishing as well. So I think we did well on that front, but funny enough, like our best shooter never really got going throughout the game, and
right.
He really struggled. We had to try and pick him up, and it just wasn't his game. And a couple of other guys as well that normally hit some shots. It was we struggled out there. But like
been there, believe me.
The thing is that I think when we reviewed it, a lot of the shots that we took, we were pretty happy with. So it wasn't a case of we were taking bad shots. It's just that our shots weren't dropping that night.
Nice. All right, I'm going to move into a bit of film. Unless somebody has a question, please feel free to jump in if you do. But if not, Jimmy, I didn't mention it to you in the warm up, but I'll play each clip a couple times. I know you've been on the show before and seen it or whatever, but the first time I'll let it run through just so you can get an idea of it. The second time I'll fumble through a description in my mind as to what's going on. And for anybody who's listening, hopefully it helps them visualize what's happening. And then the third time is just all you. Take it away. Tell us what you see, if you like, if you don't like, how you would correct, if you would run it again, anything along those lines type deal. Let's see. Are we good in terms of speed and everything for you?
Yeah, it's okay my end as long as everybody else can see.
Great. So for anybody who's listening, this is just basically one of the earliest clips in the game. It is a defensive clip for Jamie. They're in what looks like a 3-2 to me. Some coaches will call it a 1-2-2. There's a wing pass to the left side and then dribble back. And the ball gets swung around and sort of a contested three from the offensive right wing. So as far as things go, Jimmy, tell us a little bit teaching point wise, what you're looking for on your 3-2. Tell us why you choose this instead of the more traditional 2-3. And, talk to me about how you're moving. Do your guys kind of get up to par for you here, or there's some things that you'd like to correct?
Yeah, so I mean, I was pretty happy with this possession. We use our 3-2. Well, we try and use our 3-2 fairly sparingly. I mean, ultimately, our defense is a combination of our bread and butter is our man-to-man, but we press in a 1-2-2 on made baskets and fall back into our 3-2 zone. But we also run 3-2. It can be several ways. It's on my call on the way home. If we just want to switch it up for a possession and show the offense something different, just to try and break their rhythm as much as possible. We just want to be pesky on defense.
Right.
But we also switch into it quite commonly on kind of deflections out of bounds. We'll switch from man into zone. Or reverse, just to try and mix things up and disrupt the flow. So
right.
It is a 3-2. We typically play it quite flat. Our middle man in the middle, Dan's a pretty athletic guy. He's pretty active, so he covers high post pretty well as well. But we flex that into a 1-2-2 if we've got a shooter at the top, which we did have to towards the second half. Number 4 on their team caused some problems. So we started to flex that out more into a 1-2-2 in the second half. So in terms of this possession here, we haven't got our two biggest guys in. Back right on the zone at the moment, typically plays at the front. But we just wanted to be nice and active at the front line. And I felt that we did a pretty good job there. We closed our seams pretty well. So I was pretty happy with this as possession. We were a little bit slow on the first closeout, but ultimately it wasn't a real shooting threat. So we kind of got away with that one.
Talk to me about teaching points of the low 2. Are they closing out on anything? Are you expecting your wings to cover multiple closeouts? Is there a bump point or a rotation that you implement anywhere? Or, what are your teaching points when you're putting this in for your guys?
Yeah, so our back line will close out to the corner, but we try and keep them inside unless it is corner. So, when the ball's over on wing, we want to ideally front the post and then pinch the backside. Put us in a position where we can get out to the corner. In terms of bumping, we are quite active with that. We will actively bump and sometimes we'll stay there as well, rightly or wrongly. But our guys at the top are pretty mobile. They're quite quick. So, they're quite happy to scramble. But ultimately, we haven't got a huge amount of size. So we want to keep the guys on the back line down as much as possible, but we'll flex it out to the corner if it is a corner 3.
And are you trying to influence the ball to particular areas on the floor?
Picking up across half court, ideally, if we can force it weak, great. But as I say, it's when we're in our man-to-man, we're in a no middle. When we're in our zone, it's more about gap protection, just really closing up the seams. So short answer to your question, no, we're quite happy for them to reverse it and get the ball moving and eat up the shot clock. We're okay with that.
Right.
And yeah, like here, they've swing the ball for a contested 3 and we get a pretty good stop in my book. So short answer to your question, we're not over influencing. We will look to hopefully within the next sort of month add a trap to this, a corner trap to this as well, just so that we can continue the aggression from our press if we fall back into our 3-2. Yeah, at the moment, no. And yeah, we're quite happy for them to swing the ball because those mobile guards at the front, we can get out to most things with a hand on shooters.
Love it. This was just a set I like, one that you used offense. I call this a staggered twirl on the help side. So the ball started in the offensive right slot and it swings. So we're now on the offensive left wing. And then there is a stagger away. The gentleman that's coming from the offensive right corner twirls it or curls the first one. And then the low stagger or the first screen in the stagger comes up top. In this particular play, you guys try and throw the ball in and it gets deflected away. I think, and you can correct me when we get to it, I think I have another variation of this set a little bit later on. And we can talk about it at this point. But, talk to me about options in this set. Talk to me about what you're looking to establish. And, what do you feel about your guys throwing this pass here? Is it open enough for you and it's just not a good pass, or is it one that maybe you should be avoiding?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a pretty common set for us. It's our stagger action. And as I was saying before based on our first pass, this is entry to the post side. Right. Our stagger action. The first screener you see there is our best shooter. So like you say, typically he's twirling off the second screen. And he gets a high number of jump shots off of that. Right. In terms of the pass, I'm happy for our guys to throw it. For me personally, I didn't think this one was open. I think we should have hit the shooter coming off. You can see curls now, and I think with all the switching, you can see he's wide open. So I think, just bad decision to make that pass on that set. I would have preferred to hit our shooter, but that is a pass that we're happy to throw. And if you can just rewind it a little bit. If you see the post guy on the ball side, when we get into stagger, he'll drop off more into like a dunker spot just so that we can open up the window to that pass. Right. And that's a little adjustment that we made recently, actually, because we felt he was staying at the block and just taking away the passing lane. We want to throw that pass. We're happy with that, and we have scored off that in previous games. But for me, probably not the right decision here. What you'll see, scoring options from this, as the shooter's twisting off, just as he makes the pass. If we hit the shooter and the shot's not on, then the second screener will twist into a rescreen on the ball. So we're in like a slot pick and roll there, right, which gives us a nice little rip through from the shooter. So that's quite a nice little one. And if we don't hit the shooter, then the guy that's just the post that's just dropped off into the dunker spot will repost, and then we can get into some of our post entry actions from there. And again, we're against their switching defense. That's quite nice because we can get some mismatches inside.
Yeah, love it. I found when I coached high school that a lot of help side actions, hammers, interchanges, staggers, all of that stuff, wide pin downs, were difficult because the defense would be pulled almost all the way over to the rim line. You can almost sort of see it here where the defender of the low man, the guy who's guarding the player farthest away from the ball, is basically all the way over on the rim line. Do you have any counters for things such as that, where they're popping away or flaring away from the ball, and you're teaching your guys to throw long skip passes, play against long closeouts type deal? Is there anything that's in there for that? And do you also find it difficult on the help side because of how together guys are at the high school level?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, no, we currently don't have, we're not like flaring off of that as of yet. We'll just continue to twist the first man and then look for the shooter off of it and just kind of accept the fact that he's not likely to be open. But with that congestion, we're going to get hopefully a pretty good curl off for our shooter. Right. And to answer your question about the split line defense, yeah, we do see that. And actually that's something that we had to coach a lot because early on our guys were kind of screening spots a lot more, which, right, typically if you were watching NCAA film or whatever, then it would have been right. But we had to do a lot of work on getting them to understand to target the help defender rather than a spot in their mind, which I think you kind of see this a little bit here with the first screen. He semi gets
like he screens a body, he hits somebody there.
Yeah, but it's it is a difficulty, and like I say, I think it's something that we'll look to try and get some counters in for, because we are seeing it more and more, and I think it's one now we're in live play and we're playing these games, we're starting to recognise that that's taken away that twist. So we will hopefully begin to add some counters to that. But as I say, at the moment, we're normally going to get the shooter coming off that with that amount of congestion inside. So as you see here, with all the switching, he's wide open. So
right, gotcha. I think we move into some of the pressing stuff here. So this is pretty early in this first quarter. You're going to show press for the first time. I call it a bit of a 3-2, a bit of a 1-2-2, depending upon what part of the game it's in. And my note just says teaching points for time. So for anybody who's listening and not watching, the ball's on the offensive left side of the floor. He dribbles almost into the kill box or the trap zone, whatever you want to call it, that is at half court. They do actively trap, and the ball gets swung. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the 8-second count one. Yeah, they don't get over here. So great result for you defensively. But talk to me a little bit about your teaching points of your press. Am I correct that it's a 1-2-2? And are you trapping both sides actively, or are you trapping, or are you pressing more for time and deflection than you are for aggressively trying to take it?
Yeah, so it is a 1-2-2. We are actively trying to funnel into, like you say, that kill spot there where we can get that first trap. We are a little bit too jumpy here. I would like us to just kind of stay in that trap a little bit more. In terms of how long we stay, we're quite happy to press and then drop into our 3-2 and just really, as I say, we just want to be pesky with our defense and try and force different things. So for me here, I think when they reverse it, we get the 8-second call, but when we reverse it down at the point of the press, for me, drops a little bit too flat. I would have liked to have seen him stay with that and try and get that into a second trap. Ultimately, what we say is if the ball goes middle, if the ball crosses half court, then the press is done and we're back. Or if somebody on the back line sees the situation isn't ideal, then they can call it off as well. So we are quite happy to press. Like I say, we press on every make. So we're quite happy to press and then drop into our 3-2. That's not a problem for us, just to eat some time and to change up the tone of things a little bit, really. But we do, as I say, Dan's pretty active at the point of the press, and we do get a lot of deflections from it as well. So funnily enough, a point that came up today really was are we sometimes too still focused in our press, and do we sometimes come out of it a little bit too late? Which I think you'll see. You probably saw some examples of that in this game where we drop a little bit late, and I would have liked us to have come out of it a little bit more. So this particular one here, I'm happy with the second trap, but I just think his angle is not great. But we come away with the 8 seconds.
Yeah, of course, it's a great result for sure. Worth mentioning, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there were 2 8-second counts and 1 backcourt violation that you guys created. So that's 3 extra possessions that you got away with in this one for sure. Great results. Talk to me a little bit about on ball in the trap, what your teaching points are for your guys. Are they just simply tracing, or are you allowing them to reach, try and get in there and dig it out? And then for the other 3 gentlemen that are off, are they zoning up, which is sort of the typical thing? Are they allowed to knife passes? Are they really just trying to contain? What are your teaching points there?
Yeah, so on the trap, we don't like the guys reaching. We want them tracing. We're happy for them to poke a pass. Like you see, as I say, you see Dan do that a lot on reversal passes. He'll get deflections, and so we're happy with that. But we don't typically want to be reaching in for the ball, because in our league, it almost always is called. So it's kind of, yeah, we want to really keep it in that trap and force a pass over the top. And if we can get deflection on a high pass, then great. And if we can play off of that with one of the guys off ball and hopefully get some steals off deflections, then fantastic. We are zoning up off ball. So as soon as, what we say to the guys is, as soon as the ball is in an outer third, and our court's quite nice actually, despite all the many lines. We do have the badminton courts down the middle, which kind of helps us section the court into thirds. So we do say when the ball gets to an outer third, we're really loaded up. So if you can just rewind the clip a little bit.
I'm laughing a little bit because I'm glad that you told me what those white lines were, I couldn't figure out what court that was at all.
Yeah,
I was like, I see the volleyball court, but what are these white lines? What's going on here?
I think we got every sport in there. We've got the old basketball lines in there as well. So there's a lot of lines. We're trying to get that sorted out. But yeah, at this point here, where we're in and out of third, we off ball on the weak side, we should be loaded up in the middle third of the court. So you can see here the man right at center. He is zoning up, but we give him a little bit of flexibility to kind of play off of that and who's where and to jump passing lanes. Backside on the weak side will be in hoop protection, and then strong side on the back of the press will be taking away sideline pass. And then, yeah, we'll drop into. So zoning up out of it for sure. Like you can see here, we allow the reversal pass. He's not running with that too high. We don't want to over gamble, but we will allow him to play out of that zone and kind of who's there. And like this middle man, for example, if the offensive player is a little bit deeper, we'll let him go a little bit deeper in that position as well. So a little bit of flexibility to it. And, you know, sometimes we make maybe not the best decisions, but it's all a learning process.
We'll touch on that in a moment. I got one clip that I wanted to see how you'd correct for sure. What do we got next? We have, there's your 8-second. Yeah, so I think I have 3 clips on your press, so forgive me. This one is a variation, same thing, but you get your first trap and same sort of kill box on that offensive left side. He throws it over, and then you guys go and trap this second spot, and he ends up throwing it back into the backcourt. You get the backcourt violation. So I actually had a guest on this show, Brian Shea, tell me that on his, anything that goes over your head, you're responsible to go and trap. And I'm wondering if this second spot, where it's not a reversal and it stays on the same side, is always a trap for you. And if it's always coming from one of the players who is, you know, one of the top line players type deal.
For sure. I think nice quick answer to this one. I think they made us look good here because that shouldn't be a trap. I think the Kwame here just kind of made a little bit of a play at the ball, kind of semi half-heartedly on his recovery rotation. But no, we don't. We toyed around with having the secondary trap, but we're just not quite mobile enough on the back line, really. So we didn't. And it is, once ball crosses half court, we're back into 3-2.
Right.
But you know, this situation, it worked out all right from us. I think he was anticipating the trap, hit the second trap here, and threw it back in a bit of a panic. So worked out okay for us here. But we're quite happy with him recovering through that route and maybe digging at the ball or trying to get some deflections there. But we're not sticking in that trap. Really, we want, as soon as that man on the back line there, as soon as we're in recovery mode, he should be getting back home. We don't want him hanging out there for too long.
It does actually look like he's not even coming to trap. He's really just coming to run by, like you said, and get into the backcourt there. And I think the player just panicked a little bit and threw it away.
Yeah.
As
I say, for sure, we're happy for him to come and dig at the ball or like I say, get any deflections. But no, we're not actively trapping.
Love it. Zone rotations, you're in your 3-2 again. You guys get beat kind of badly on this one. So the offensive side, they run sort of like an Iverson cut over top. And then they have a player come to the offensive left wing. And then, you know, sort of a slow closeout, not a big deal. But they have a player in the dunker spot on the same side. There's a bit of a drive. And then when your back line finally steps up a little bit, bounce pass in, gives up a layup, your man on the other side's a little bit late in rotating to get a layup out of it. So talk to me, in an ideal world, how would you like to play this within the concepts that you teach your guys?
Yes, this wasn't an ideal defensive possession for us. But yeah, no, I think at this point, we really want our guy at the point. That's not typically who play at the point of our zone. He's kind of playing a slightly different position there. But we want him really sinking to free throw line at this point. I think he kind of hangs out high a little bit too much. A little bit too worried about 13 on the shot. So typically we want him dropping nice and early. The back line, so at this point here, when he starts the drive, I'd prefer it if that back line man would have contained a little bit more and not stepped up quite so early. But the weak side back line should be on split line right now. And that for me is the real issue. So I'm not too against what happens here, he does throw that pass, but yeah, this guy on the weak side should be split line. And then the weak side guard, who's kind of just ball watching right now, should have sunk right down into almost the weak side block, really, so we can cover any skip passes. So I think for me, it was just late anticipation, late awareness, and maybe stepped up a little bit too high at this point on the back line. I think Kwame could have confidently got over that. Well, I'm not sure whether it was a screen or a kind of a high post up, but I think he could have quite easily got over that, and we didn't necessarily need to step up as early as we did. But ultimately, I think what killed us was the weak side wasn't over anywhere near early enough.
And talk to me a little bit about on this pass to this wide slot wing area, the player that does kind of close out. I believe you just referenced him as being Kwame, that could have gotten over this screen. The angle of the closeout, to me, it looks like they're forcing sideline baseline here. Would you prefer a square closeout, a forced middle? Don't care, just be there and like, how high should he have closed out for this particular player for you?
Yeah, I think obviously, like, you can see his body position on his closeout isn't ideal. He's not particularly quick off of this. But I think the baseline force is typical from our man-to-man defense, because that's the concepts that we have in man-to-man. So
right.
I'm happy with sending it there. We don't really want to funnel middle, but I'm kind of happy channeling the ball down that way. But like I say, I think at this point, I think Kwame could have stayed with him, and we didn't need Kofi to step up so early on the strong side of the back line. So yeah, in terms of that closeout, we could have been a little bit better in the actual quality of his closeout. But I'm happy sending that baseline side and off to the corner.
Love it. What do I got? We got, this is, sort of your bread and butter, your side pick and roll. I asked in my notes, is it a play call? Is it, what are you guys doing in the play after the play? And I find that your side pick and roll is, I wouldn't go so far as saying unique, but it's unusual to see the through cut before to get into it type deal. And I'll talk about what I mean in a second. So for anybody who's listening, the ball's basically at a high slot area, almost at half court. We enter to the offensive right slot, and then it gets swung back to the left side of the floor, the left wing. The player who passed it to the wing goes through and exits ball side, so almost like a Butler cut, but it's with the through action where they actually go through the key first. And then you get the screen coming from the opposite block. It's sprinted into. I'm wondering if the player who goes through is supposed to be almost like a traffic screen, like sort of a rub screen, get in the way of the player sprinting for the ball screen. And then on the help side of the floor, both players are trying to space on this particular clip. It's a little bit late. And then we don't really get anything out of this primary action, which is one that you went to a lot in the game. So the reason I pulled this clip was play after the play. What are your sort of concepts that you're teaching your guys? The ball ends up left wing, and it's a jab 3-point shot that's missed. But, without being married to the result, talk to me about what you see and all the things that I asked in there.
Yeah, so this is what we call shake action. So off of this wing entry, this is wing entry on with the post in the opposite side. So this is, again, one of our, basically the opposite of stagger. So that through cut there, as you said, when it's kind of almost a rub screen, we can do one of two things really. So that guy that just sets the rub screen there, he can either cut to ball side corner if he's more of a shooter, and that will get us into more of a shake setup on the side pick and roll, or he can ram screen and then replace at the block if he's more of a threat inside. So that off of that pick and roll, we've got a weak side dunker. So ram or shake, we can pick either out of that based on personnel. I think we probably potentially could have got a little bit more contact on the rub screen, but ultimately it's a deceptive cut. It's trying to keep the defense on their toes as to which way we're going. We did say going into the game that shake was going to be a consistent one for us just because of the switching. Ideally, if you rewind it a little bit, the ball handler should have lifted more to 45 before he comes off that screen. I don't really like the way we turn the corner on that screen. Should have lifted a little bit higher before the screen arrived, but that's one of those things. We still came off of it, and ultimately we got the switch that we wanted. Right here, it was more about then what do we do from this. So ideal situation for me here would have been that we get the ball to the shake and then feed the post with the mismatch, and that's something that we tried to go to fairly regularly with varying consistency. But the roller actually rolls all the way through here, which he shouldn't have done. He should have stayed at the ball side block to then repost. And then if we don't hit the shake, so if you go back to when Ben comes off the screen, at this point here, if we don't attack that, that's where we have our Euro continuity. Right. So Ben would retreat dribble here, and that would trigger Kwame at the wing to back up, and Josh in the corner to fill behind, hit the wing, and then we would run into a new shake or a new ram from there, with the back cutter ram screening for the roller, which is why here he's on the wrong side. He's gone too far. So he should have rolled, stopped at the block, and then that would have allowed us to continue into our Euro continuity, which is a little bit different to standard Euro continuity, but something that works quite well for us. Unfortunately, for some reason, this game, we didn't particularly get it enough, and that's something that we've been working on a lot this week. But ultimately, with the switching, we knew that we wanted to just pick the switching apart through the mismatches. So to be honest with you, like, I wasn't too worried that we weren't running our continuity because we achieved what we wanted to do and we got 3 switches out. So right. It was more about, at this point, we needed to make better decisions as to where the ball was going. Whether we were going to hit the roller early, whether we were going to hit the wing for the wing flashing for like a pinball pass to the roller, whether we were going to hit the shake man for the shot, or whether we were going to hit the shake for the re-entry into the post and run our post action off of that.
How much of all of this that you're mentioning, like the ram versus the exit strong side into the shake action, or the what you're doing out of the Euro continuity when you get into play after play, or how much of that is feel and they're modifying their own versus you're telling them what they need to be doing and they're executing it time after time after time?
Yeah, so typically I'll dictate the first action normally. When they go continuity after that, it's really them. It's up to them to decide, and it's really for the passer to, when he comes off the first screen and makes the pass, it's really for him to decide what am I a threat with, and do we want to run shake or do we want to run ram? Where am I most effective? Do I want to be in the dunker spot? Or do I want to be in the corner to lift? So from that point there, there's no dictation from me. They're really into their continuity there and making their own decisions. And if we're doing okay, I'll let them make their initial decision whether it's ram or shake. But here I wanted a lot of shake because, as I say, we wanted to go through the shake into the post. So that was kind of dictated a lot throughout this game.
Love all of that. Would you, in turn, and this gets away from in-game a little bit, would you in turn be teaching this through a lot of small-sided games where they're just trying to like are your practices messy at some points where they're failing a lot and you're just kind of pulling them out one by one, like maybe try this, maybe try that type deal?
Yeah, so we try and do a lot of things just a little bit differently. So we'll use things like Kahoot Quizzes just with the team, just to how do we attack this, and we have things like little cue cards for them off pick and roll and in certain defenses, what can we look for. But yeah, a lot of small-sided games, especially in their morning skill development sessions as well, where we'll play like a lot of 3v3 shake and making decisions off of that. And like I say, it will be messy, but it's a great chance to stop and talk and reflect on that. And we'll have like cue cards on the side of the court and that sort of thing as well. So we do a lot of 3v3 play. Typically team sessions are 3v3 up to 5v5, and we don't typically do anything much below 3v3 play when we're in team sessions. But we like a lot of small-sided games for our man-to-man offense. Pretty much all of our actions we can pull out into 3v3 sections. Like we have some pinch post stuff that we can do 3v3 as well. The pick and roll stuff we can do 3v3, and even like some of the stagger stuff we can do by just kind of picking who we're going to have on the court out of that 5 and how you're going to play from that kind of thing. So I think it's really beneficial for the guys. I think they really enjoy it as well, and I think ultimately it links back better to gameplay.
Love it. Your skill sessions would normally be all of your players broken down into smaller groups, or would you only have like, Menelik, Jamie, and Rico in one, and then the next day it's 3 new players type deal?
Yeah, so we have our skill developments. We have a 14-man roster. Our skill developments broken into a group of 6 and a group of 8 in their morning sessions, and then they can get any kind of extra bits that they get because they're all sick form guys, so they have things like 3 periods and whatnot. So any extra bits that they can get on the court with me in like 1s and 2s, and we try and get them in pairs most of the time so that we can do like finishing stuff and like advantage play stuff. But we can do 1-to-1s as well. We can shoot or whatever. So they'll kind of top it up throughout the week with those extra little sessions that they can get in, depending on what their workload's like, obviously.
Right, love it. Next one we got here. I don't know why my email is going nuts. I apologize.
No dramas.
This one is a staple on my show for sure. You've definitely heard it before. This is actually after a make by them, but I would still call it a transition 3. Basically just dribbles up the floor, gets to the offensive right slot, and launches one. So talk to me, coach. Transition 3, yay or nay?
I knew this one was coming.
If it's yes, who gets to do it, and what do they have to do to be able to get the green light? And if it's no, what are you saying to somebody who takes this shot?
Yeah, I mean, this was probably slightly too contested for my liking, but with this gent in particular, I trust him a lot to shoot the ball. As I said to you before, he didn't have his best shooting game. Well, he certainly didn't have his best shooting game, but he's the kind of guy that I trust him to shoot the ball. Good things tend to happen when he's got the confidence to shoot the ball. So, short answer to your question, yes, depending on personnel. Like some guys, and we try and talk about that a lot in practice, and when we're session shot selection, we try and be really honest with, look, what's a good shot for you is not necessarily a good shot for you right now. So for this guy, maybe you could argue potentially not the best one. We could have got some action here, but he took a lot of threes this game that I was really happy with, and we got other guys that I'm happy taking a 3 in transition. But also depending on flow of the game as well, like. Do we just want to get into action at this point? And that's difficult to say, like at what point of the game are we in? Are we up bigger? Where are we at? And again, we'll try and talk about that in kind of timeouts and things. And right at this point, we want to be making sure that we're running action and not taking quick looks.
It's funny, Jamie, like 76 episodes in now of this show. And I've asked this basically every show that I've had a guest. And no 2 answers are the same. And I think it is actually a pretty good indicator, a little bit in terms of where people's minds are in terms of the style of play that they want to be at and what their expectations are from different players. Because you hear a lot of really different answers from coaches to the effect of, this is how I communicate. I want this to happen, or this is why I don't want this to happen, or this falls within or does not fall within what I'm trying to do. And it's such a silly little one. And it's going to be one of the clips that are in there for sure. But I think that it's kind of an interesting one to really hear how prepared or not prepared sometimes coaches are as well, because you can see like from the detail in which they answer, like, yeah, I do this or I do that, or it's personnel based or it's time and score based. You get a real concept of like where the coach is, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it is heavily personnel based, really. And I've toyed around with things like green light shooters before, but I just found it to be too restrictive and to actually hurt us. So I think it's just one that comes a lot from a lot of video analysis as well, a lot of conversations, and ultimately, like, everyone on our team knows that this guy's is okay to shoot that. But equally, they know that there's a lot of other guys that's not their shot, and it's just like I said, I think it's just conversation based, and when we do any team video, just being really honest and saying like, right, ultimately, is this your shot? And on what point of the game are we at?
Yeah. And the funny, like, so one of the gentlemen who plays for me is on the call right now and has played for me previously. But like, it's funny because I mention this all the time. And like, if I say, hey, Jamie, that's probably not the shot for you, some people are going to be very offended by that and be like, oh, shut up, coach, you don't know, whatever. And then some players are going to be like, well, why? And they'll question you. And if you have a reasonable answer, they'll listen to. And other players will just be like, yeah, okay, I get it. And I think ultimately those discussions, if you are capable of defending your position, build trust. And everybody on the team sort of gets an idea of like, well, this is what coach wants or doesn't want type deal. And it's all from such a simple shot, really. Next one is a rotations one. So this is the start of the second half. Sideline out of bounds, ball swung. You guys are on defense. You're playing man, so in your bread and butter as you speak, as you say, excuse me. Ball's in the offensive right slot, and this guy just gives a little hezzy and goes through the nail, and you guys pull in from both sides, sort of off the dunker and off of the wing. I guess not really both sides. They both come from the low man, but there's a bit of a confusion as to which guy is coming. And the nail's not really covered, and we got a kick out to that wing, a redrive, and a little floater. They missed the shot. Talk to me about your rotations, how you'd like to see this handled, how you can make this play better defensively, all those fun things.
Yeah, I mean, this starts for me on this closeout here. Like we should be no middle. So the fact that he gets beat through the nail is a big no-no. So ultimately, when we're reviewing this, this is the source of the problem right here. Right. His closeout should have been sending sideline, no middle, because at this point here we're hurt. In terms of principles, the help should come from that low man, and then the wing guy that pulls into the ball, which he shouldn't. He should actually be dropping to cover the dunker spot, which, yeah, misread there. And gets out to it. What we would like, we tried to pill switch. So what we would like to happen here is the gent that's currently making a play in the gap should be on his way to drop and cover any kick passes. So that pass that goes out, what ideal situation, what we'd want to see is the low man help, the weak side wing drop to cover the dunker spot, and then he's covering, if he's covering two in that position, and then we'll pill switch out from there. So that's ideal situation, but we talked to, like, we do a lot of defensive stuff, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, and just encouraging the guys to communicate and scramble and make plays. And you know, here it doesn't really work out for us, but if you're talking ideal rotations, this is what we should see. But again, like I say, we talk a lot about communicate, peel, and just be really active in your anticipation to, you know, what's likely to happen next.
Would I have this right, Jamie, in terms of where everybody would be going?
Yeah. So what we'd want is the gap defender there to ultimately, we don't really want to make a play like that in the gap. We want him dropping below the elbow, so he's got a slightly better vision on that closeout. But yeah, in terms of rotation, that would be right.
So then my question would be, and I'll change the color just to sort of illustrate this. If in an ideal world this happens and the ball still goes to 13 as it does,
yeah,
this gentleman here that is sort of digging, stunting at the ball would be that first closeout. Who would be the second closeout for you if the swing continued to this person? Would it be this gentleman here, or would it be this gentleman here?
Second option. So the beaten ball defender would peel out.
The beaten ball defender is okay.
Yeah, that's our general rotation. We try and teach the guys not to take too much pride when they're beaten. Just accept it and peel out early as possible and as disruptive with their hands as possible, because there is a lot of pride and no one wants to get beat one-on-one in defense, but it's understanding, right, I'm not recovering at this point, and that's not my job anymore. We're switching on that help rotation, so I need to get out onto the perimeter.
And the helper would go back to his, and the helper guy, this gentleman here, would go to the man who was the ball initially, number 4.
So it'd be communication based. So I'd be okay with us staying switched at that point generally, but I mean, in this situation here, we'd want to re-switch that because of the mismatches. Right. you know, we Forza was quite a nice shifty guard. He's quite quick and Kofi, the big man under the hoops, probably not going to guard him 1v1 out on the perimeter. And we've obviously got a mismatch on the other side. So in this particular situation, yeah, we'd want to, as you said, we'd want to switch that. So we haven't got that mismatch. But if that's size based and if that's not an issue for us, then we'll just stay switched as we are. So the weak side wing dropping down to cover the dunker spot would stay there, and the primary help would stay with that man, and we wouldn't need to then switch again.
Love it. Moving on.
I think it's one that ultimately just comes from a lot, like I say, a lot of 3v3, 4v4 play where we're just allowing them to make those mistakes and make those decisions. And we're always talking about active anticipation is a key term that we always use. Just trying to get the guys to think a step ahead, like what's likely to happen. You know, if it's a long closeout, we're likely to get beat. And well, I said likely to get beat, but there's a good chance we can get beat. So we'll be loading up in help early. Just those early anticipation moments, really.
Play I like. I think this is the same one that I pulled earlier. Looks a little bit different because I think the staggers aren't set effectively, and it kind of to me just looks like a pin down and a slip as opposed to a stagger, but I might be incorrect. Talk me through it. You guys move the ball to the offensive left wing. Looks like you're setting the stagger away, and then there's not really a twirl happening, I guess. I don't know. Maybe a twirl happening there. And then you got the pop and the slip again. And here's the shot that you mentioned would be open a lot for you earlier in the game. So I think it's the same play. Correct me if I'm wrong, but, talk to me about why you're using it again at this point in the game. And if it's play call to get it up top versus if it's them just playing at this point, trying to make reads.
Yeah, this for sure. At this point, this was me allowing the guys to have a little bit of freedom in what they were running. I think the reason why it looks a little bit strange is the first screen here, as I said before, and our conversation about the split line defender. If you look at the position of that first screen, he's screening an area right now rather than a defender. Which I think is why it looks so funny. We give that first cut to the opportunity to back cut as well. So I think it's just because it's so congested here. But yeah, it is the same action. And as I say, this is the shot that we're talking about. And then if we were to twist that into the high ball screen, that second screen at the elbow right now would twist into a ball screen. So we can get a put up or a driver for that.
He actually ended up being wide open. It looks like 2 went to the back cutter.
Funnily enough, this stagger action actually worked quite well against them because of all the switching. And I think just the amount of congestion there was tough to communicate. And it gave us some nice looks.
Yeah, love it. I think I have one more press in here. And the reason I pulled this one was because of the diagonal pass and the rotation on the miss of the diagonal pass. So for me, when I used to play a lot of pressing, this pass would drive me insane. So I don't know what your theory is on stealing the ball while pressing. That's sort of what I wanted to ask. But, you're zoned up in the back. And then to me, I'm almost like, why are we even pressing if we're going to allow this pass? And then when he misses on the gamble, who should be coming and going where and how? I mean, you're beat at this point, basically. But what is the way to try and remedy it if you are beat at this badly at this point?
Yeah, great question. To answer, yeah, no, I mean, I don't really want. It's a tough one. Like if he's a little bit quicker off the mark there, it should be a steal. And a lot of those diagonal passes we do get steals from. This particular one, I think he gambled a little bit late, so my preference would have been that he'd stayed home.
Right.
The kind of what do we do from here? This sideline man right now that you can see just on the right hand side of the screen should be sprinting to get hoop protection at this point, and then we should be recovering down the backside. But really, it's one of those where he should have got. For me, he should have stolen it. I think he's just a step late on that one. Like he's a big guy. He's got big arms. Like for me, he should have stole that. But if the gamble was late, I'd rather you stay home and we'll get into our 3-2.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I have a permanent eye twitch from passes like that. I can remember specific players that I would consider, like, you got to steal that. You're way too athletic to not steal that. Steal that, please.
Yeah. You realize from him straight away. You can tell, like, he realizes as soon as he misses it, he realizes, oh snap, coach isn't going to be happy with that one.
We're getting dunked on now. That's what's going to happen here.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's one of those kind of those risky ones that we take. And short answer to your question, we should be stealing it, but it's one of those.
I hear you. This was a late game baseline out of bounds. I actually think this was pretty much the only baseline out of bounds in the game that sort of worked / looked decent from them. And, not having film, not being able to prepare. My question would be, first, how would you fix this? And second, what would be your principles that you would stick to against an under out that would help you not have to deal with a result like this? So for anybody who's listening, they have sort of like a how would I describe this formation? It's almost like a box, I guess. I don't know. There's a triangle of 3 players that are on the nail, on the weak side elbow, and on the weak side block. And then their last player is sort of wide wing, I would say, on the help side of the floor. So there's almost nobody ball side. The player who starts on the opposite elbow curls off over top. Looks like he's going to get a jump shot because he's pretty wide open on that curl, but then one of the 2 screeners just slips out. You guys bite on the ball fake, and you get a wide open at the rim layup, and the help side wing lifts so that there's no help in behind. So in an ideal world, how would you guard that better? And, what would your principles be like standard against an under out?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I didn't think our preparation and this out of bounds play was particularly good. Like, you can see weak side wing here is pulled right out, and he could have been a lot more, he could have pinched a lot more. And if you just look at the, kind of our awareness, we're kind of pretty switched off on this possession, to be honest with you. Right. This should have been a switch here. So the moment he comes off on that screen, we should have switched that on the first one. And then we would have switched. Ideal situation, we switched that and we switched the second. And I think we would have contained the slip pretty well. Dan here is drawn out because we don't switch, and then he gets in behind on the slip. So it's poor defensive awareness and poor defensive execution from us. But yeah, it should have been switch just to contain the slip, and then we would have matched up out from there. It's a tough one. But at the same time, if weak side wing was more pinched, then could he have potentially helped on the slip as well? So it's for me, it was the lack of switching that did this.
Love it. And then in terms of like your standard, I mean, you're not going to see film, as you said, so you're not going to have this set to really walk through, work it out. In hindsight, is there anything that you would adjust from your standard coverages, or do you think maybe they just should have been a little bit better in terms of like angles of their body, communicating, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think for me, it's really the latter. Like, when you rewind it again, you can kind of just see that we're just not really prepared. We don't switch, which we should. We miscommunicate, and for me, it's like, did they score through their execution, or did they score for us just switching off? And I think it was us switching off really here. So yeah, we should have been a lot more alert. Body position should have been a lot better, and we should have been switching a lot earlier.
Well, 14 on this play, the gentleman who's guarding number 7, who ultimately scores the layup, I think just had a second of like, what am I doing? Just mentally, like, I don't think he moved on this play.
No. Confusion, I agree. This was certainly one of those where it's a bit of a but come on, wakey. But yeah, they happen with us, and as I say, it comes back to, it's the level that we are, and kind of how new to the game these guys are. We do unfortunately get those moments where it's just like, hello, are we here?
You guys recognize there's a basketball game going on, right? Like, I'm not the only person here, am I? No, I we jest about it as coaches for sure, but like, it's a gradient that it's a gradient. It's a learner's curve for all of us. And it's just a matter of taking these things in stride and getting better, obviously, right?
And that's the beauty of our, like, we have the film now, which is fantastic because we watch all this stuff back and you know, we'll tag all the guys in it, and our expectation is that when you watch the film back, you watch the playlist that the coaches give, and you watch everything that you're tagged in. So, you know, we can pick up these things and then we can have those conversations about them. And ultimately, like you say, it's that learning curve. It's, can we learn from that and avoid that in future?
And now I forget, it's been a little while since I've used Huddle, but if you tag your players and send them stuff, does it allow you to view that they have seen it?
Not on my account. It shows me their viewing time, but not on my current account. Right. So there's an element of trust there, really. Right. But to be honest, our guys kind of love watching film. They're pretty good with watching film. Like, I mean, we'll stick the film up on Huddle, and before I've even properly statted it and tagged it and whatnot, the guys have already watched it through once. They enjoy watching film. So I'm quite happy to just have that as a trust thing.
That's being ahead for sure, in my opinion, because I film all of my workouts, and there's definitely some people that don't know what they're looking for. And the more film you watch, the better at this you are, in my opinion, right? Like almost anybody I talk to, present company included, you know, they'll say that, like, oh, well, you gotta watch film, period. That's really what it comes down to. You got to spend the time looking at the film and being honest and dissecting it, type deal. So
yeah, it's just so eye-opening for our guys at their level as well. You know, when we're talking reflectively and we're having these conversations, if there's no video, I think sometimes it's quite hard for them, again, because they're relatively new to the game as well. It's hard for them to piece those bits together. But when we can stick the film on there and they can see it, it just makes all the difference.
Well, so I was actually a pretty early adopter of film, right? So like I remember my mom being at games with like large camcorders, sitting there doing like the back and forth. Shout out, Mom, love you. But like, just like you said, like you really get a pretty good concept of, oh, so that's what coach is seeing, or like, oh, I am actually quite a bit farther away on that than I thought I was, type deal. It is very eye-opening. And, you know, you can take it one of two ways. You can be like, nah, that's not what happened. There was this or this, and, you know, that's blame, complain, defend. Whereas if you're open and honest with yourself, you'll probably improve at a far more rapid rate than if you didn't have the film, for sure. What do we got? Who's making fun here? All right. Take care, Jimmy. Thanks.
Thanks, Jimmy.
And then we got our last one, I believe, which was it might be their last one or the second one, but their late game press. They tried to throw something at you. It, in my opinion, was fairly ineffective. But your press break looked like, to me, you actually had all 5 players in your back court briefly. So walk me through sort of your principles, what you're looking for, and how you feel you did in terms of breaking it and getting it through. So for anybody who's listening, just like I said, they put on some late game pressure. We enter it to, we get lucky off of this inbounds pass. And we enter it to like the center of the key area defensively. And then we advance it on the left side of the floor. And as the trap is coming, we throw the diagonal pass that I was telling you that I'm angry about. And then we're broken and we go for a layup that we miss and get fouled on. So talk to me about what you guys are trying to do here.
Yeah, so this was interesting at this point. It's obviously them chasing the back end of the game, and I was kind of pretty ready to call the timeout and put something a little bit more organised in. At this point, we said 3 go short on the outlet, and we wanted to get the ball out wide and play through, ideally cutting through to middle, and then, like you say, that diagonal pass. And we were pretty confident that we'd hit one of those guys because their pressure was it was pretty gambly, and you know, you can see in the video that those short passes, we get the long one here, but could argue we could have got the ball middle as well. So I think we're just really playing through the numbers there. Most of the time when they put this press on, as soon as we got it in, we were able to run over the top and get a pass over the top. So we didn't really have to adjust too much from that. We just stuck with 3 short, 2 outlets and a man middle. We had our point guard inbounding as well, which just gave us that easy safety valve there as well. So yeah, we didn't end up particularly having to call much of it. We expected the pressure to come, so that's where we spoke about that. And as I say, I was ready to call timeout and put something a little bit more structured in if we required it. But to be honest, we did a pretty good job of just playing it with the numbers.
Like it. All right, what do we got here? I think that's the end of it, actually, Jamie. So, you know, as far as this game, thank you for letting me run it back with you, go through it. You guys did escape with the W. You got out. And I just wanted to take a second and really say, like, you know, I not only appreciate you sitting down with me here, but I value the round table and the sharing that we have had. For anybody who's listening, that's just our little WhatsApp group and how we communicate with each other. But you know, to me, I feel that there's been a lot of growth as coaches to be able to sit down with you guys, talk about things. Really appreciate it. And you know, that being said, you know, hopefully there's something productive and of value for all the coaches who tune in and jump on the call and listen. I appreciate you guys. Thank you sincerely. And Jamie, once again, man, appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. It's an absolute privilege. I was very excited when you asked me to come on. So thank you for taking the time to sit down. And I look forward to getting your feedback from the rest of the game as well as we move forward and we prepare for the next one. So,
for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. I'm going to stop the recording there. Tune in next week, please, and thank you. And you know, just thanks for everybody who tunes in. As I continue to say, I really hope that you continue to find value in this because I have throughout the time that I've been doing it. Appreciate you guys.